The MVP race this year looks obvious. Like, if you scroll through social media, watch highlights, or even just listen to people talk about it, you'll probably hear the same names in the same order. Jokic, Shea, maybe Luka if you're trying something different. And that's it. Conversation over. But that's when it gets interesting, because the MVP race is never as simple as it looks. Every year there's a moment where everyone thinks it's locked up, and then something shifts. A team goes on a run, a player gets hot, the narrative changes. And suddenly, what looked like a clear winner isn't so clear anymore. And this year, that shift might already be happening. Because when you actually break it down, not just highlights, not headlines, but what these players are doing, how their teams are performing, and what the voters actually care about, this race is way closer than people think. Like, genuinely up for grabs. And there's one name in this conversation that most people aren't fully taking seriously yet, but probably should be. Right now, if you ask most people who the MVP is, they're probably going to say Shea. And honestly, it makes sense, because when you look at it on the surface, he checks every box. He's averaging around 30 a game, doing it efficiently, barely forcing anything. No wasted movements, no rush shots, just getting to his spots over and over again like it's automatic. Mid-range, free throws, drives, it's all under control. Even all the game winners he's been hitting in the recent weeks. And then you look at the Thunder. They're not just good, they're at the top. They currently have the best record in the league, one of the most consistent teams night after night, and everything runs through him. That's usually the formula. Best player on one of the best teams putting up elite numbers. That's the MVP. And on top of that, there's the narrative. Young team, fast rebuild, new era of the league. And voters love that. They love when it makes sense. They love when the story lines up with the numbers. At the end of the day, they're humans too. So when people say it's Shea's award right now, they're not wrong. But that doesn't mean it's over. Because once you look past the surface, there are a few things that start to make this race a lot more interesting. Because there's Jokic. Because this is where the MVP conversation gets uncomfortable. Not because he's not in the race, but because what he's doing is honestly kind of ridiculous. We're talking about a centre averaging around 26 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists. That just doesn't make sense. Centres aren't supposed to do that. That's something you expect from a guard, not a 7-footer controlling the entire offense like a point guard. And it's not just the numbers, it's how he gets them. No wasted movement, no forcing shots, and no bad decisions. Every possession feels like he already knows what's going to happen before it does. You double him, he picks you apart. You stay home, he scores. You try to speed him up, he'll slow the game right back down. It's not flashy, it's just perfect. And Denver is still right at the top of the league, running everything through him like always. So if you're being honest, this level of production is kind of unheard of. We've never really seen a player control the game like this, from that position, this consistent. But here's where things get weird, because none of that might matter. It comes down to one thing: voter fatigue. Jokic has already won multiple MVPs, so now the conversation changes. It's not, is he the best player? It's, has he done enough to win it again? And that's a harder question, because even if he's putting up historic numbers, even if he still might be the most valuable player in the league, if it doesn't feel new, if it doesn't feel different, voters start looking somewhere else. They start looking at a new story, a new face, someone who hasn't already been there. And that's where Shea starts to gain ground. That's where Luka starts getting real consideration. And that's where this race starts to tighten, because now it's not just about how good are you, it's about timing and whether people are ready to give it to you again. And this is where things start getting really hard to separate, because Luka's case is always the same, but somehow it still doesn't feel normal. We're talking about a guy putting up 30 points, 8 rebounds and 8 assists, basically running the entire offense by himself every single night. Not part of it, all of it. Every possession starts with him, every decision goes through him. And somehow, even when the defense knows exactly what's coming, it still works. Step backs, cross-court passes, late shot clock bailouts. Half the time, it looks like the possession is dead, and then Luka just creates something out of nothing. And that's what makes his case so interesting, because in terms of pure offensive load, you could argue no one in the league has more responsibility than him. But here's where things are starting to shift. The Lakers are winning, and not just random games. They're starting to build momentum. They've won 4 straight. And you can feel it. The offense looks more controlled, the team looks more comfortable, and everything is flowing through Luka the way it's supposed to. And that matters, because MVP isn't just about the numbers, it's about timing. If your team gets hot at the right moment, if you start climbing the standings late in the season, that can completely change how the voters look at you. And Luka's right in that window, because if the Lakers keep winning, if that streak turns into something bigger, if they push towards the top of the conference while he's still putting up those numbers, now it's not just great stats on a decent team. Now it's impact. Now it's winning. And that's when Luka becomes really dangerous in this race. So now think about it. Shea has the narrative, Jokic has the historic consistency, Luka has all the momentum, and we're still not done. Because there's one name in this race that could flip everything. Because there's Wemby. And this is where the MVP race stops being normal. Because everything about him is different. We're talking about a 7'4" center putting up around 24 points, 11 rebounds, and close to 4 blocks a game. He's already got Defensive Player of the Year locked in the bag. But the stats don't even tell the full story. Because his impact is something you actually have to watch to understand. Teams don't attack him the same way when he's on the floor. Guards will literally drive, see him, and just turn around or pass the ball. That's not normal. That's not just defense. That's an overwhelming presence. And on top of that, he's not just a rim protector. He's handling the ball, shooting threes, creating mismatches that don't even make sense. A 7'4" player doing step back shouldn't exist, but it does. And that's what makes his case so interesting. Because if you're just looking at talent and impact, he's already there. The only thing holding him back right now is one thing, team record. Because historically, MVP doesn't go to players on mid-tier teams. You need to be at the top. But here's where everything changes. If the Spurs somehow can pass OKC as the number 1 seed in the West, now this isn't just a cool young player story, now it's a takeover. Because that would mean a player in basically his second season has just led his team from rebuilding to the best record in the league. And at that point, voters have to take it seriously. Because now you're not just rewarding stats, you're rewarding impact. And if that happens, Wemby just doesn't enter the MVP race, he might actually win it. So, right now, I think Shea probably has it locked up. He's got the numbers, the wins, and the story all lining up at the same time. And that's usually what decides it. But if we're being completely honest, Jokic probably deserves it. What he's doing is just not normal, and at some point, you kind of run out of ways to explain how consistent he is. But then there's Wemby, because if the Spurs somehow finish as the number 1 seed, I think he's winning it, no question. At that point, the impact is too big, the story is too strong, and the league won't ignore it. So yeah, it might look like the MVP race is already decided, but it's really not, and that's what makes it so interesting. And I believe that whoever does win the MVP, out of the 4 people just mentioned, they have a really big chance to also win the championship, which will change the all-time rankings immensely based on whoever wins it. But that's a story for another day.